just as a final double check to make sure I like everything where it's sitting, because sometimes as you go to tighten screws.
All right, guys, we are back. You saw the full bow put together, which, by the way, we don't build bows, so we're kind of, Dan from Elk Shape asked me this question. I've heard it before. Why do we call it bow builds?
I don't know. That's
I didn't
just
build
a
this bow.
Yeah.
So
we assembled it.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound
like
as cool.
The Avengers assemble. Drop a comment what you think we should start calling it rather than bow builds. Everyone calls it a bow build, but we don't build the bow. You slap some accessories on it, and what we're doing right now, leveling the sight. So this sight, actually, I'm going to take this off because this is a little loose because I usually run wraps on my scopes, which I will be putting a wrap on here. But we're going to level the proof sight. We put it all together. We've got everything sighted or good to go as far as the rest goes, as far as the strings, as far as the peep sight. Everything's good to go. Now we're going to level it. We're going to do the first, second, and third axis adjustment, which is what they've added on the proof sight. They added a first axis adjustment last on the Arxos. They didn't have that, and that's something that a lot of people wanted to be able to have that feature accessible. So we'll walk you through all that today. That's what we're doing today. And then the third axis, so we're going to do the best that we can here in the shop, and then we always recommend that you go and shoot it in. Especially if you're shooting out of a tree stand. If you're shooting, a lot of you guys watching are here out west, especially on the Wasatch Front. There's some stupid steep angles, and that third axis is really important, especially when it comes to killing an animal and being on target. So we don't want you to drift left or right. We'll talk about that a little bit, how we do it here in the shop, and then what you need to do out at a target. And then hopefully you're shooting Total Archery Challenge and some other local shoots. That will help as well. Getting you sighted in with your third axis adjustments. First and foremost, we've got Jay here from Wild Arrow. He's one of the owners of Wild Arrow and absolutely loves working on bows. Usually it's Mark working on my bow, but Jay does an amazing job. So we're going to have Jay go through this, the first, second, and third axis here. So tell us how do we go through it here with the proof?
Yeah, so my favorite way, I've talked to a lot of professionals about this, and I do get a little bit of varying opinions on that. But one of my favorite things to do is, obviously, it helps so much if you have a bow vise, right? So I don't have to physically hold the bow. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these Hamskea levels, and I'm going to hook it somewhere on the sliding rail, and hopefully that part is in front of the second axis, or where this rail and the bubble now need to match up at 90 degrees, okay? But what we like to do here just works really well is, when I put the bow in the vise, I take a carpenter level, and I'm going to run a carpenter level from each limb next to the axle. And again, depends on what professional I've talked to. I get some varying opinions on that, but that's the way I've been doing it. I've been showed for 20 years, and it seems to be working, so I haven't switched.
Does it matter much, limb versus limb pocket? I've heard both.
Yep.
Just what's the...
And then that's the thing, too, is I've kind of heard both as well. Okay. I feel like either point of that bow is going to be so level that whether you're going from the actual limb to the pocket, as long as it's on a straight vertical line, I really don't think it matters a whole lot. In the past, I've seen a lot of guys, and we used to kind of do this, where we'd actually hook a level to the bowstring. Again, it might be a little bit off either direction based off of what shims you have. Because if your cam is shifted to the left or to the right, and then this one's here, now your string's technically at a slight angle. But again, for most guys, it's so close, as they're aiming on target, they'll probably never see that minute level being off 1 degree or not. But my favorite way is put the bow in the vise, get the bow perfectly level, and then what we're going to do from there is make sure that the first axis is parallel to the bow itself, right? And depends on, again, who you talk to. I've heard from Jesse Broadwater on this. He doesn't care where his first axis sits, because as long as the sight slides on the same plane, it doesn't matter. But for me, I do like to get to full draw and have my bow as level as possible. And then my second axis intersects the first axis at 90 degrees. So as I'm at full draw, the bow is straight up and down, and my bubble is now in the middle. There has been some pros that I've worked with in the past that had a natural cant to their bow. They, especially on target archery when they're running a ton of weight, they'll get to full draw, and their bow is actually not square. Their bow is actually slightly leaned one side or the other based off the amount of bias they have. What those guys will do is let the bow lean, and they'll move their first axis to where it's still on the same vertical parallel line. So they're actually not setting their first axis to the bow. And certain pros like to do it that way, which is totally fine. But the Wild Arrow way, the way we've done it, straight bow, straight level, everything's on the same line. And once you kind of get used to having that bow perfectly vertical, that's just been my preferred way to do it.
I'm nowhere near pro level.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So
I just want to kill animals with this thing.
Yep. So
so the first axis, I guess, walk us through where. So the first axis is level with the riser itself, correct?
That's what we prefer to do.
Okay.
So now, I got the carpenter level in here. You can see the bubbles are in the middle, right? The bow's square. So I know the bow now and the vise is perfectly up and down. And with your first axis, there is a lot of sites that actually don't offer a first axis adjustment now. Some sites companies do it, some don't. Nowadays, with the quality of machining that they offer, I don't think it's a huge deal, especially to the fact that the quality of the bow and the machining work that they're doing between the sights and the riser, they're getting these sights so square to the bow now. Okay. Now, not to confuse your audience, but there is a thing as what we call fourth axis.
Okay.
More of a target archery related thing there. But when guys are playing around with dovetails, they got, those guys out the dovetails are sliding their sight in and out. Fourth axis is actually when you slide your sight in and out from the bow, that it actually comes back at an angle. Does that make sense? So if you push it out, maybe your pin actually went out to the left, or if that block or machining's off, your pin went out to the right. So depending on when you're moving your sight in and out, that's what we call fourth axis. So you got to watch that on certain dovetail sites because you think you're moving it straight in and out. You're really not. Yeah. They could change that degree just a little bit. The other thing that we've seen on certain dovetail mounts, and this is a terminology we came up with because we didn't know what else to call it. We call it fifth axis. And yeah, really confusing. So basically what we've noticed on certain dovetail mounts on when you're sliding in and out, the sight actually wants to roll too. Does that make sense? There's all kinds of little factors out there, but really if a guy gets his first, second, third axis set and he's not really moving his sight in and out, he's just kind of put it on his bow, tightened everything down, and it's level, you're probably in a good solid position there. So what I'm looking at here, so when I put this back on, bubbles in the middle, you can see that the Hamskea level I've got on there is pretty much in the middle, right? So probably from the factory, sometimes you get really lucky with this, with good quality machine and these guys that assemble these sights, that the first axis and everything's on the same parallel plane as the bow. And then if we look at your bubble here, we're actually pretty close. So what I'm now doing is taking this bubble and making sure it's at 90 degrees to this block right here. We don't want your scope canted down to this side or pushed up to this side.
That's the second axis.
That's the second axis. Yep, correct.
So first axis, we look at using whether it's right now we're obviously talking about the proof, but for anyone out there that may not be running the proof, it's the rail that slides up and down with the bow itself.
Yep.
And then the second is you're looking at the bubble inside your scope housing once that first axis is set.
Yep. And what we're assuming here is because I have the level hooked to here. It's one of the most convenient places. And I do wish sight companies would get to the point where they're actually machining us spots or flat parts to be able to hook the level to the sight easier. Does that make sense? So there's certain sites out there that we try to level, and there's not a good spot for us to put the Hamskea level on there. So we certain models, we kind of got to jimmy rig our own system.
Or you almost just have to set it on the site.
Yeah, set it on the site. So I do hope in the future, a lot of these site companies go, the Hamskea level system for guys that are trying to level stuff at home. You can buy these from Hamskea. They're a great little tool, but you've got to find the right spot of your site to actually put it to. And some sites just don't give you a flat enough surface area to be able to mount it correctly. So I feel like with the proof, what we're assuming is from the first axis block, which is this, to where this rail is, that all that's on the same plane.
Okay. I want to remind you, we are giving away a 65 millimeter spotting scope from Leupold. No purchase necessary to get entered. None whatsoever. Simply subscribe. Drop a comment down below on this conversation, any questions you may have throughout the conversation, and use the link, get entered so that I can know how to contact you. We will be doing a live giveaway on that when we hit 6,000 subscribers. So no purchase necessary. Win an amazing spotting scope worth about $1,000. You are going to love it. It's amazingly clear glass, their new Gen 2 model. Really excited about that and grateful to Leupold for giving that.
And because the quality of sights nowadays are getting better, I think a lot of manufacturers are paying attention to that. Yeah. That I do trust that, hey, the bow's square, that bubble's in the middle. This right here, you can see that your second axis bubble is favoring to that side just a touch. Now we're still within the lines. Again, for most guys, as long as that bubble's pretty much within the lines, you're probably okay. They do make some aftermarket tools that I know a lot of professionals around, like Tim Gillingham's yelled at me for this for years. Tim likes to mount his sight to a sight leveler. There's actually a device you can get that goes on the bench top. You mount your sight to it. That's how Tim prefers to level his sights. He levels that and then puts it on his bow. So it's one way to do it. Me personally, I prefer to have it mounted to my bow just in case there is any type of tolerance or issues here, maybe with the powder coat or the machining's off just a little bit. I prefer to level my sights to the bow versus on a device. So a couple different ways to do it. But for me, like looking at where everything's leveled there, we could take your second axis. We're going to bump this edge of the scope up probably just 1 degree. And the only thing that's going to do is center that bubble between the black lines even that much better.
Yeah, You know me, I like to try and take as many variables out as possible. So I can't blame my equipment when I screw up. So on this, the second axis adjustment
is right here.
So you take that and the two screws on either side push against each other.
So it's like a micro adjust, which I really like. There's a lot of companies out there that have a second axis that they're kind of sensitive. You loosen a screw and the whole scope slides and moves. So the fact that they've given us second micro adjust, not only the first is micro adjust, but the second axis is also micro adjust, makes it a lot easier when I'm trying to do micro adjustments like what we're going to do on yours. So I can just loosen one set screw and tighten the other. I'm going to slowly just pivot that scope versus other models you loosen, that can slide and go wherever it wants to. So
in previous on the Arxos it was the second bolt down here. And there is still some that you do loosen that a little bit to move it left and right, but it was more of a macro adjustment. And here you're on the proof, you're able to adjust it, a lot more micro adjust per se. That's awesome.
So we're going to do that. So we got to take this edge of the scope up, right? So I'm going to loosen this side here. Get the right size wrench always helps. And just micro adjust and tighten this side. Probably go just a little bit more. So yeah, every site's different. And the one thing that I do see a lot of times for guys that maybe order a site offline, very rarely do they come out of the box level. Sometimes you get super lucky and they're there, but any site that we sell here at Wild Arrow, when we mount it to your bow, we're going through these steps every single time. But for guys that are purchasing sites offline or somewhere else, something you want to get double checked. For us, just to level it really quick, and honestly, is a pretty quick, fast job. We charge $25, but just to know that, hey, it is mounted properly, levels are good, and then we'll dive into third axis. Third axis is a little bit trickier based off of the shooter. There's a lot of variables with third axis that I still think guys aren't fully grasping or understanding.
So you're screwing that screw in a little bit more to bump the scope.
Yeah, so what I want is I'm trying to get the scope to pivot this way, right? So we're just going to use these micro adjusts here. And this is the first proof that I've actually leveled. So this is a good learning experience for me because every model is a little different based off of if it's a spot hog or black gold. Like obviously you're getting to the same end point, but the where they put the screws and the micro adjust stuff is all a little different. So every site out there is going to have its own little options based off of the manufacturer and what they're offering there. So really close there. Again, we're still within that black line, right? Like that bubble is still there. So
it's not even touching the black line
Yeah.
anymore.
So,
now we're just getting particular.
Yep, exactly.
Which is
so on this particular model, where they put the set screws compared to that the front screw there, I actually had to tighten this side and loosen this side to get the scope to pivot where I wanted.
Okay.
And then once I got it there, you can see we are about as dead center as you could possibly get it there. I'm just going to come back up front to this and lock it down. So that's snug now. And then just as a final double check to make sure I like everything where it's sitting. Sometimes as you go to tighten screws, the bow could shift in the vise, or maybe you're off just a little bit. So what I like to do is just the last check here. I'm going to double check. Yep.
Trust but verify.
Yep. Like where my bubbles are at for the bow square, this level, which represents first axis, is good. And now we know that this bubble's in the middle, so we're intersecting that perfectly at 90 degrees. So that's basically first and second in the vise. And then we'll have to take this out and we'll show the guys how to set third axis. And then I'll cover a couple of topics that as you're setting third axis to really watch for, because third axis is so individual to the shooter and to the bow. And what I've noticed, like you like a 2-bar system, you're running a pretty long quattro bar with some weight here, another quattro bar at the back. That can actually have a big effect on the third axis of your bow. A lot of times when you get to full draw, the bows want to roll or it's bow hand torque. So to your point that you mentioned earlier in the video, setting your third axis here in the shop is a great starting point. But the best thing to do is go to the range or take your target up where you can get some pretty steep shots, practice a lot of downhill shots, and then actually practice uphill, because your bows, the gravitational pull in the bow is going to change based off up or downhill. So this is something you definitely want to verify in the summer to make sure that you can trust your third axis when you get to full draw, that the pin's on the target, the bubble's in the middle, and the arrow is still hitting behind the pin.
Perfect. Yep. And then I do just want to say, so you have a dialed sight on one of your bows that you've got set up here in the shop.
Yeah.
So if you guys are not, there's a lot of people that want to get hands on the sight before you buy one. So you can come on down to Wild Arrow as well and check out the site here in person and see if it's something that you want to pull the trigger on.
Yeah. So far, that one that I put on my bow, awesome. Not only, one thing I will say, Dialed's winning on the cosmetics, right? It is probably the best looking sight out there. And some of the changes they made this year on the Proof series, definitely some of the concerns that I had with the older model, man, they really addressed those and really, I think, fixed it this year for me. So great sight from these guys.
They have horizontal. They've got a 3-pin and 5-pin. I've got the 3-pin. I like a 10th pin just because I like the smaller, more precise pin. They have a 19th, and then I have a horizontal pin that we'll be doing as well a little bit later on a different bow. That I did a 4-pin that you can custom order, and I did a 19th on the top, and the rest of them are 10ths because as I go out further in distance, like my top pin's the 20. Right. So anything at 20 is going to look big. So, and anything after that, I've got at 10. So they have all of those options, tons of colorway options. Like this green matches the Hoyt green. They've got black, gray, red.
The gray on my Prime this year looks awesome. Fully customizable. So great option from these guys. And the other thing too that, that I had a lot of questions on, obviously I sat down with you and the owner of Dialed the other day and got to ask him a lot of those questions. I like the idea of the fact that this is going to slide into your bow at the optimal angle to maximize guys' distance. So, I'm thinking even getting one for my wife. She's a shorter draw, lower poundage. When she goes to attack with me, she wants to shoot with us. She wants to shoot the 110, 120 yard shots. And with some of her other sight setups, she wasn't able to do that because of vanes clearance issues. So I think for someone, especially like women or youth, that you're like, man, I want to take into attack. I want to be able to, maybe not shoot an animal that far, but be able to practice that far. The angle design from Dialed is actually really cool, pretty innovative. Be able to get a little bit more distance out of your setup.
Sweet. So third axis.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
So third axis, you're going to actually draw this, and we do it without an arrow. I know we're going to get some hate because we draw bows without arrows, but it's safe. Just don't let the big dog eat, right?
Well, Hoyt's dry fire tested, right?
It's how you settle the pockets on all their bows. Guys don't know that, but that's how you do it. So don't dry fire. And if you're watching this, if you're going to draw back your bow without an arrow, just know the risks involved. That we do work on dry fired bows. That happens a lot. So
don't lie about it.
Yep. We know the difference, right? If a bow comes in and the guy goes, hey, this just blew up. I've done this for 20 years. I know the difference from a bow blowing up to a bow being dry fired. But if you're honest with us, we'll take care of you. It's fine. It happens. As long as you don't get hurt, we can always fix your bow. That's easy. So, all right, you got your release on you?
I do.
Perfect.
So just so I can show the people, this is what where's that string at?
Right here. It's probably hard to pick up in the camera.
With the light right there behind it.
Yep. Yeah, the light. So we use this as something just a straight vertical. Guys at home that want to do this, if you take a carpenter level like what I was using earlier and put it against like a door jamb or just anything that's a straight edge, basically what you're going to do is we're going to draw the bow. I'm going to have Jonathan draw the bow. He's going to get set and level. He's going to have his bubble in the middle of the scope. And then what he's going to do, I'm going to have him angle up. And there's a couple different methods to do this. If you buy the Hamsky tool, the third axis tool, it's a great tool for that. But what I have found to trust over the last several years is I actually trust the pins in the scope. Nowadays, they're getting these pins really centered down the middle. And as Jonathan draws and he comes up, if he's going to keep all three of these pins on that pink rope off the ceiling, okay? And then if the bubble's leaning left or right, we're going to make a scope adjustment here.
And if they have horizontal pins,
you can still do the same thing.
The pins are still in the line.
Yeah, like especially like, you know, I like companies like Spot Hog for this reason. If you look at a lot of Spot Hog sites, they have a wire that comes down the middle. That's their center line. And that's not only for when you're adjusting your pins up or down to make sure your pins are square, but nowadays when I have checked it with the Hamskea third axis level compared to a pin in a scope, I get the same reading every single time. It's very rarely do I see it's not correlated. So,
and if they do want to use the Hamskea third axis level, how would they do that?
Yeah, so on this particular model, I've actually taken it off. I'll grab a different one here and see if I have one installed. But
should have brought mine.
Yeah, I've got the pin for it. But basically, it's a straight vertical rail. We haven't really used it a lot the last couple of years because we've been trusting the pin so much. And I've got one kicking around here, but basically with this Hamskea level, it's threaded in two directions. You can run that pin that comes up this direction or flip the level and it runs up this direction. Basically, you're doing essentially the same thing as the pin. So that block that I have, or that pin, once this is mounted to the site, you can draw back, make sure that that vertical piece of the Hamskea level is perfectly on that pink rope, and then double check your level bubble. But again, with good quality sites, and I mean good quality, like, you know, don't be doing it with a $35 True Glow. But with good quality sites nowadays, because the pins and the machining is so tight tolerance that even when I used to run that piece of the Hamskea that was for the third axis, there was always a direct correlation from my pins to that piece. So I've just got to the point where I trust my pins in the scope. And because I'm still going to go outside and verify it, if it is off a little bit, I can make a slight adjustment when I'm at the range. But here at the shop, it gets me honestly right where I need to be. So
we're not going to be standing to.
So about just somewhere right in here. You don't have to be too far away, but so we're going to draw back. We do it without an arrow because usually we have Blake working in the press. We don't want to shoot him.
Keep your thumb behind the button.
Well, even on these two, you can do that, the lock feature.
Oh, yeah. The little practice lock.
They have a little practice lock feature on the stands, which makes it nice. So if you do accidentally touch that button, it doesn't go off. So I want you to draw and start level at the wall. Okay, get anchored. You're through the peep sight. Perfect. Make sure the bubble's in the middle. And then I want you to angle all the way up as high as you can get it towards the top of the ceiling. And then let me know if when those three pins are on that pink rope. Okay, perfect. Okay, so go ahead and level back down and let the bow forward. Yeah, so if you noticed on that, when you got
to the left,
yeah, the bubble's hanging left edge, right? And so now what we want to do is, because the bubble's here, we want the bubble to come back to center. So we're going to actually take this edge of the scope and we're going to move it this direction. Okay, so we want the bubble that when you draw back, and it should correlate whether you go. Now, if I had you draw back and come downhill, like a downhill shot, your bubble would read the other direction. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, but one of the big factors that I see with guys with third axis is when they get up to full draw, they're letting the bow itself roll, right? Mm-hmm. Especially with the weight that they're running on these back bars. So a lot of times guys will angle up, their bow's going to want to roll this way. And on downhills, the bow wants to roll the opposite direction. So it really affects guys' third axis. They're like, man, I keep adjusting my third axis. I can never get it in. So really what your job as the shooter is behind the bow is when you do get to full draw and you're level here and you angle up, to keep the bow square. Do not let the bow roll on pivot on this axis point, right? Mm-hmm. For guys that fight a little bit of bow hand torque, also third axis is really tough for those guys. So when I'm paper tuning a guy through the paper tuner, I can see that his arrow's kicking left or right based off hand pressure. Well, if you have bad hand pressure on your bow, you're essentially torquing the bow before you draw, right? So you get a guy back that he's kicking left or right through paper, he's already kind of torquing the bow, this axis, right? Okay. Well, then you gotta think when he levels up to third axis, the bow's already twisted, right? Yeah. So your job as a shooter, for guys setting third axis, you got to make sure your bow stays on that same parallel plane that we set it to, and it comes straight up or straight down like a knife edge. Okay. And so if you're letting that bow twist or roll in your hand, it's going to greatly affect where your third axis is set to.
And then the third axis on this did get a little bit better as far as the adjustment, actually a lot better.
Yeah.
So it's more of a almost a trailer hitch style where it comes in like the trailer hitch there and pivots that way, rather than last time. I'm trying to remember, you had to take your windage knob all the way out, expose 2 little tiny screws, and then adjust the pressure there.
So I'm going to move your sight here. So in order to get to that screw, it's kind of blocked here. So I'm going to take your sight. We're going to micro adjust it out. So you're going to have to go do a little bit of sighting back in. But that allowed me to get that wrench back into that position. So if you came up, your bubble is to the left. So what we actually got to do is take this edge of the scope. We're going to move it in towards the bow. It's going to push the bubble back up to the right. So I'm going to take this, loosen it, moved it in just a click, snugged it back down, micro adjust this back in. So you're somewhat centered back kind of where you were when you sighted in.
So go through that again. What'd you do?
Yeah. So when I went to get into here, the micro adjust now, so you got to loosen this to move the micro adjust.
So it's overlapping a little
bit. It was overlapping just a little bit, which is fine. So I loosened this, pushed the scope out, loosened the screw, and I took the scope and I pivoted in. So I took this edge closer to the bow. So now this time,
right there.
Yeah, this pivot system's really slick actually. Snug right back down, so nice and tight, secure. So now we'll do the same process. You'll draw back, level it at that plumb bob that we have hanging from the ceiling there, and we'll see if that bubble is more centered this shot here. Or not shot, the draw. Don't shoot it. Get that bubble in the middle. Good. And then come up. Let me know when those pins are there. Yeah. Now see how that bubble's more centered there? Yep. Okay, go ahead and let down. Good. So I don't know if you felt this, but when you first came up, the first initial, you were good. The bubble's there.
And it started.
And then it started to walk to the side, right? So probably what that is that hand pressure. You're letting that hand pressure off, and it's letting the bow twist in your hand just a little bit, right? It's really close. Like when you first drew, that bubble was centered right where I want it to be. But again, as you get up, and it's a different angle, because now when you're drawing, you come up here. A lot of guys want to try to push or roll the bow in a different position, and that's all third axis correlated. So again, that's where you got to keep that bow. My best analogy with that is a knife edge. So I tell guys, like, if you're looking at the edge of my knife here, you can see this edge. If I take and roll the knife, you can see either side of the blade, right? So what I want you to imagine is when you get to full draw, your bow's square because you got everything leveled, and you're just going to bring this straight up or straight down, but we're not going to let it roll to either side. Yep.
Okay, cool. So sweet. Okay, so I'll go back there and get my 20 locked in, and then we're done.
Should be good.
Yeah.
Sighted in now.
Yep. Get this camera turned here. See Jay.
Yeah.
Beautiful face.
I know.
So basically, if you guys want to test these sights out, take a look at them. Jay's got one on his bow here at the shop. Considering carrying them.
I think we will. Honestly, there's enough demand for them. And again, the first one was cool. I think, being a first gen, they had some little bit of kinks to work out. But after playing around with this new sight, a lot of features I like about it. And not only that, but just the cosmetics, man. Like the Cerakotes that they offer, the custom ring colors. I did a gray one with an orange ring, and it looks sharp. So
yeah, and there's a lot of other customizations as well, guys. And it's going to obviously take a little bit longer. They do end up carrying them in the shop. Obviously, you order them through them, come down to the shop, get your hands on them. But you can do green pins if you don't see red very well. You can get yellow. You can do all green. You can do 4-pin, 3-pin, 5-pin. For you guys out there that are like 7-pin, I'm sorry, can't help you very much because you've already got a busy enough site as it is. So maybe you don't ride a slider. You probably just keep us fixed. At 7 pins, that's a lot of pins.
There's still guys that want them.
Tim Gillingham.
He
runs like 9.
I think it's 19. Last I seen his site, I got dizzy looking at it. So yeah,
it's like you have to count, as you get down. I don't know how he does that, but he does, and shoots very well. But yeah, with that being said, thanks again, Jay, for your help. It's super simple again compared to the Arxos. A lot more micro adjustments available. And like I said at the beginning of the video, they named it the Proof as proof that they've taken your feedback, our feedback, and changed a lot of things. The tighter tolerances, and of course the adjustment. Yeah, with that being said, I'm going to go get 20 sighted in, so then I don't punch any more plywood.
Yeah, we got to go pull an arrow out of the wall for you now.
If we can get it out. We're going to see.
I didn't know we were doing durability tests this morning, but apparently we are too. So
apparently.
Yeah, they held. It looks like it held up pretty good.
All right, but with that being said, guys, come on down to the shop here at Wild Arrow. get your bow set up. We've got tons of different sites available down here, and really appreciate your guys' support. And with that being said, get out, live your life, and love it. Cool.